You won't believe what happened to this farmer at a tractor dealership. Imagine walking into a place where you think you're just going to buy some equipment, but instead, you're slapped and humiliated in front of everyone. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, that's exactly what went down, and the reason why will leave you speechless. This farmer had been saving up for months, planning on buying a brand new tractor to help with the harvest. But what he didn't expect was the treatment he received from the dealership staff. They laughed, mocked him, and treated him like he didn't belong. But what unfolded next is something you need to hear. It's a shocking twist that will make you question everything. So stick around because this story is far from over. What happens next will leave you questioning not just the dealership, but the people involved. Stay tuned. To understand why this farmer was treated so horribly, you need to know a little bit about his background. He wasn't some rich businessman or someone with deep pockets. He was just an everyday guy, working long hours in the fields, trying to make ends meet. For years, he had worked tirelessly on his small farm, barely scraping by. But after a particularly good season, he managed to save up enough to buy the tractor he'd been dreaming about for years. This was supposed to be a milestone, a sign that things were finally looking up. So when he walked into that dealership, he expected to be treated with respect. After all, he was about to make a significant purchase. But instead, he was met with cold shoulders and condescending remarks. The salesman looked at him like he was a joke, dismissing him as if his hard work and savings didn't matter. And that's when things took a strange turn. As the farmer stood there, trying to explain what he was looking for, it became clear that the staff had no interest in helping him. They were too busy chatting among themselves, almost as if he wasn't even there. One of the salesmen, a younger guy with a cocky attitude, scoffed at him when he asked about a specific model. "You can't afford that," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. The farmer, shocked and hurt, tried to ignore it, thinking maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But then it happened again and again. Each time he asked about a different tractor, the responses were dismissive, even mocking. It felt like they were purposely belittling him. Meanwhile, the other customers in the showroom, who were dressed in fancy suits and expensive shoes, seemed to get all the attention. It didn't take long for the farmer to realize what was going on. He wasn't just another buyer. He was an outsider in their eyes. But what happened next made everything even worse. The dealership's manager, a man with a reputation for being ruthless, walked over to the farmer with a smirk on his face. What he said next shocked everyone in the room. "You really think you belong here?" he sneered. The farmer felt his heart drop. It was as if everything he had worked for, his years of sweat, his sacrifices, meant nothing. And that was only the beginning of the humiliation. The tension in the room was suffocating now. The farmer stood there, his face red with a mix of anger and embarrassment. He clenched his fists, but the words he wanted to say caught in his throat. The manager, seeing the farmer's discomfort, took another step closer, as if enjoying the power he had in the moment. "You don't belong here," he repeated, louder this time, making sure the woman's voice hung in the air like a challenge. The manager stepped back, clearly startled, but the farmer was still processing what was happening. Who was this woman? She wasn't a regular customer, and there was something about her that made the manager uneasy. As if sensing the tension, the woman reached into her bag and pulled out a piece of paper. She held it up for the room to see, her eyes never leaving the manager. The dealer's face drained of color as he recognized the document. It was a contract, one that tied the dealership to a series of ethical and legal obligations they had been ignoring for months. The woman's voice was calm but cutting as she spoke again. "You're not just in trouble for your treatment of this farmer," she said, glancing briefly at the farmer, then turning back to the manager. You're in trouble for defrauding customers and breaking the law." The room went completely still. The manager, now visibly sweating, stammered, trying to find his words. That's not true," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The woman didn't flinch. "It is," she said simply, and then added, "and I have the proof." The entire dealership seemed to hold its breath. The farmers, the salespeople, and the other customers were all watching in stunned silence, waiting for what would happen next. The manager's face twisted in panic as he started to understand the gravity of the situation. Not only was his reputation on the line, but his entire business was now under scrutiny. And the farmer, who had been humiliated just moments ago, stood at the center of it all, uncertain but empowered by the unexpected turn of events. But just when the manager looked like he might crumble, the woman dropped another bombshell. "And just so you know," she added, her eyes now flashing with a hint of something more personal, "I'm the one who's been investigating you for months." The tension in the room skyrocketed. The stakes had just been raised to an unimaginable level. The dealer, who had been so smug just moments ago, was now the one facing the consequences of his actions. But no one knew how far this was about to go. What was going to happen next? Would this farmer's day of humiliation turn into something far more powerful than anyone had anticipated? The clock was ticking. The manager's face twisted in panic, his mind racing as he tried to figure out his next move. For a moment, it seemed like the room might explode with tension. The woman, still holding up the incriminating document, didn't flinch. She knew this was the moment everything could change. "You think you can get away with this? That you can treat people like dirt because you're hiding behind your fancy dealership and your connections," she said, her voice sharp with anger. "Well, it's over." The manager opened his mouth to say something, but the farmer's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't realized it before, but everything he'd endured, the humiliation, the mocking, the rejection, had been a test of his strength. And in that moment, he understood something crucial. He didn't just deserve that tractor. He deserved respect. He deserved to be treated as an equal. With a final look at the manager, now completely defeated, the woman walked out of the dealership. The farmer stood there for a moment longer, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. As the room began to settle, he walked up to the counter, finally ready to make the purchase he had dreamed of for so long. But just before he could speak, the salesman who had helped expose the truth stepped forward, a small, almost apologetic smile on his face. "I've got a better deal for you," he said, his voice more genuine now. "You deserve better than what they've been offering." And in that moment, everything changed. The farmer didn't just leave with a tractor. He left with his dignity restored. But as he walked out of the dealership, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just scratched the surface of something even bigger. What else was out there waiting to be uncovered? As the farmer drove away from the dealership, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over him. The weight of years of struggle, rejection, and humiliation was finally lifting. He had stood up for himself, and in doing so, he had not only gained a tractor, but something far more valuable, his self-respect. The woman, whose quiet strength had started this chain of events, had made sure he knew that he was worthy, not just of the equipment, but of dignity. In the weeks that followed, the dealership was forced to answer for its corrupt practices, and many of its shady dealings were exposed. The manager was let go, and a new, more ethical team took over. The salesman who had once mocked the farmer now worked with him, a symbol of redemption and change. The farmer's story became one of inspiration, showing that no matter how powerless you feel, Standing up for yourself can change everything. Sometimes the right moment comes when you least expect it, but when it does, it has the power to reshape your world.